Hi, I'm Rowenna. Ever been told you weren't part of the family after they sold your childhood home behind your back? Mine erased me from our legacy. But I didn't stay silent. I bought back the house they threw me out of and turned it into something they could never ignore. Before we dive into this story of betrayal, silence, and family drama, tell me, what time are you listening and where are you from? Drop it in the comments. Let's begin. I hadn't been home in 8 months. The last time I walked up the Bundy estate driveway, it was Thanksgiving, and my name was still engraved on the mailbox plaque, neatly tucked under the Bundy family. Now that plaque was gone, replaced by a polished brass plate that read only "Private Residence." I shouldn't have been surprised. I already knew the message behind that choice. I just didn't know how loud they'd make it. The text had come 3 hours earlier. No explanation. Just, "Family meeting, mandatory, 7 p.m., don't be late." No "Hi, honey," no "Hope you're well." Just the Bundy signature tone. Command, expectation, control. When I pulled up, the driveway was already full. Celeste's new Escalade, Travis's smug little Tesla, Mom's pristine BMW. Everyone was here. Of course they were. They had something to celebrate. My exile. The front door opened before I even raised my hand to knock. My father stood there in his favorite burgundy sweater, the one he wore for big family announcements. His arms were crossed. "You're late," he said. "It's 6:58. In this family, on time is already too late. I followed him inside without a word. The air in the living room was thick, not from food or warmth, but from the kind of tension that clings to the walls. Everyone was already seated, just like a courtroom. Celeste, Dahlia, and Travis on one sofa, each looking like they'd rehearsed their parts. Mom sat by the fireplace, her back straight, hands folded like she was waiting for Mass to begin. A stranger I didn't recognize, a woman in a navy pantsuit with a sharp jawline and 2 white teeth, sat next to Celeste. A lawyer. There was one chair left, a single armchair placed directly opposite everyone else, facing the tribunal, facing judgment. "Take a seat," Dad said. I didn't move. "What's this?" Celeste cleared her throat, and the woman next to her opened a folder. "My name is Wendy Strauss. I've been retained to facilitate a legal matter on behalf of the Bundy family." Wendy slid a thick document across the coffee table. Her tone was clinical, like she was reading a grocery list. "This is a formal notice of familial disassociation. It includes removal from inheritance, revocation of access to family assets, and full dissolution of familial obligations, effective immediately." "Wait, what?" My voice didn't shake. I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. "It's not personal," Dahlia said, avoiding my eyes. "Not personal?" I looked at the paper, the ridiculous legal jargon dancing in front of me. Disowned, erased, exiled, all wrapped in lawyer speak and printed on premium linen stock. Travis finally spoke. "You made your choices, Ro. You went your own way. You started whatever this little crafting thing is." "It's not a little thing," I said. "You chose glitter over growth," Celeste interrupted. My jaw clenched. "You mean I didn't choose your version of success?" Mom finally looked up. Her lips were drawn tight, but her voice was cool. "We gave you everything. Private school, tutors, contacts. You chose to waste it all on a glue gun." I took a deep breath. "You never once asked what I was actually doing." "It doesn't matter now," Dad cut in. "Sign the papers, make this official." For a moment, no one breathed. I picked up the pen. My hand didn't tremble. My signature looked clean, final. Wendy took the pages back with a slight nod. I stood up, adjusting my coat. They thought I'd cry, plead, beg for a second chance, but I didn't give them that. As I turned to the door, I looked back at all of them. "You're all so obsessed with the family name, with reputation, with legacy, but none of you ever asked what I've built, what I've sacrificed, what I've become." Mom flinched, just a little, a flicker in her eyes, but she said nothing. I walked out without looking back. The cold outside was a relief. I reached my car, unlocked it, and sat for a long moment. My phone buzzed. A sales notification. Another custom order. $3,000, handmade recycled chandelier. My fingers hovered over the screen. Then another buzz. Another order. Then one more. The numbers flashed like tiny fireflies. Each one a reminder that outside of this poisonous house, someone valued what I made. What I created with my own hands. I looked up at the house, its windows glowing with curated warmth, but inside they were colder than the Colorado wind. They thought they'd just cast me out tonight. What they didn't know was, I'd left them long ago. They didn't break me. They just gave me permission to stop pretending I still belonged. 3 days passed. I kept telling myself I felt nothing, that the papers I signed were just that, papers, that I hadn't lost anything worth grieving. But every morning, I woke up to silence, the kind that doesn't just settle around you but seeps into your skin. That afternoon, I decided to walk. I didn't bring my car keys. I didn't plan a route. I just left my apartment and started moving, past familiar trees, the corner bookstore with the chipped green awning, and the little garden where the neighborhood kids once left painted rocks. I didn't mean to pass by the house, but my feet had minds of their own, retracing old memories embedded in concrete. And there it was, the Bundy house, my childhood home, except now it looked wrong. Not just cold, but foreign, as if I'd never lived there. The curtains had been changed, no more floral lace, a new mailbox, the welcome mat was gone. And on the perfectly trimmed lawn, a white sign stood like a slap across the face, for sale, private showings by appointment only. My chest hollowed. I stood frozen, barely able to breathe. They didn't even wait a week. There was no message, no phone call, no warning, just this. I backed away slowly, then pulled out my phone and searched the address. And there it was, live on every listing site, complete with a slideshow of glossy, retouched photos. I tapped through the carousel, my fingers shaking. My bedroom was now labeled a guest suite. The mural I painted at 16 was gone, painted over in a sterile beige. The kitchen? God, the kitchen. I had helped renovate it during college. I picked out the tile, installed the cabinet hardware with my own hands. I even carved my initials into the baseboard behind the pantry and sealed it myself. Gone. All of it. I looked closer. Every family photo had either been removed or edited. In the holiday shot from Aspen, I was cropped out completely, like I'd never stood there laughing in that red coat. The description at the bottom read, "Charming 3-bedroom home perfect for hosting family holidays." Family? The words scraped against my ribs like glass. I wasn't even a footnote anymore. I scrolled to the realtor's name, snapped a screenshot, then another of the photo of my old bedroom, and the kitchen, and that damn living room rug Mom had always hated, yet kept. They didn't just disown me, they scrubbed me. They were burying me while I was still breathing. I kept walking. I didn't know where I was going until I reached the edge of town, near the lake trail. I sat on a bench and stared at the phone, the images glaring back like a funeral slideshow for someone still alive. I emailed the screenshots to myself. Subject line, "They erased me." Then, without hesitation, I added, "Let's see what happens when I rewrite the deed." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. The burn didn't need an audience. They had made a mistake. They assumed silence meant defeat. But they forgot I had learned how to build with broken pieces. That every time they clipped my wings, I collected the feathers. And this time, I had enough to fly straight through the storm. The next morning, I skipped coffee and went straight to organizing the studio shelves. Not because they needed it, but because I did. My hands needed to stay busy, my thoughts distracted. But the harder I tried to focus, the louder the ache inside my chest throbbed. I pulled out a plastic storage bin labeled "Old Files" and popped the lid. Tax records, art school rejection letters, childhood report cards, all the debris of a past I thought I had filed away. Then I saw it. A long ivory envelope tucked between an outdated art fair brochure and a bundle of utility bills from my first apartment. The return address was embossed in gold, National Foundation for Emerging Creators. The postmark was from 10 years ago, maybe more. My breath caught. I sat on the floor, carefully peeled it open. The paper inside was thick, textured, still pristine. Dear Miss Rowenna Bundy, we are thrilled to inform you that you have been awarded the 2008 Global Sustainability Fellowship. The words blurred. A full scholarship, international mentorship, showcase in Europe, funding to launch a design line. I read it again, and again, and again, but it didn't change. I had been chosen. I had won, only I never knew. I looked at the postmark again. I would have been 17, senior year. Just after I submitted that entry, my reclaimed bookshelf design, to the national contest. I remember staying up late in the garage, sanding those warped planks, cutting each one by hand with a saw Grandpa left me. I remember mailing the application myself, and then nothing. Weeks passed. I kept checking the mailbox. My parents told me it was silly to wait. "You did your best," my mom had said. "Time to start thinking about business school applications." I never got a letter, because she never gave it to me. That same year, Celeste was accepted to a private college in Boston. They threw a whole dinner party for her. Dad gave a speech. Mom got her a monogrammed suitcase. They never once mentioned my bookshelf again. I stared at the letter, my hands trembling now, not from shock, but from rage that had been frozen so long it thawed into something deeper. Betrayal. It was never about capability. It was always about control. I put the letter down gently, stood up, and walked over to my sketch station. The sunlight streamed through the studio windows, bouncing off the copper sculptures on the shelf. I grabbed a blank sheet of fibered paper and pressed it onto the board. Then another. I dripped melted beeswax across the edges, burned the tip slightly with a lighter. This piece wouldn't be pretty. It would be truth. I sketched the outline of a woman with her mouth sealed shut, stitched with thread, but eyes burning with something defiant. I called it The Silenced, a sculpture of resistance, of all the things I never got to say. I didn't cry, I didn't need to, because now I knew this wasn't new. They didn't start breaking me last week. They started long ago, when they threw away my first dream and told me I was better off without it. When they stole that letter, they planted the first seed of my silence. But the joke was on them. That silence became strategy. And from that, I built everything they never saw coming. I didn't plan on working late that night, but silence has a strange way of coaxing the truth out of you. With the studio lights casting long shadows and the scent of cedar glue hanging in the air, I lost track of time, my hands shaping a delicate frame out of salvaged steel. The commission was for a private client, someone who had seen my work in a sustainability journal and insisted on a custom piece. It was a sculpture that would hang above their fireplace. Clean lines, reclaimed elegance, and unapologetically bold. Everything I'd never been allowed to be growing up. The chime on my phone pulled me out of flow. A voicemail from my mother. I stared at the notification, thumb hovering, then hit play. Her voice was calm. Too calm, like the surface of a lake hiding something dark just beneath. "We saw your name mentioned on one of those sites. Lifestyle something. Looks like you've been keeping busy. Cute little project, Rowenna. You could have had a real career by now." The silence that followed felt sharper than the chisel in my hand. A real career. That wasn't a compliment. It was a dig. A surgical reminder that no matter how far I'd come, in their eyes, I was still playing in the dirt. Still just the artsy one who never knew when to grow up. But it wasn't new. In college, after I declined a marketing internship at Dad's dealership, I remember her saying, "This isn't a life, Rowenna. This is a phase. You're not 13 anymore." When I got my first solo gallery invite, she said, "That's nice, but have you considered going back to school for something more stable?" And when I bought my first studio space, she didn't even acknowledge the lease, just asked if I was still gluing trash to things. Each sentence layered itself like paint on rotten wood, thin, brittle, easy to crack. The studio door creaked open, and Ivy walked in holding a brown paper bag and a drink carrier. "You haven't eaten since lunch. Don't make me guilt you into pad thai." I didn't move. I just hit replay and let her hear it. She blinked, then set the bag down without a word. "Cute little project," she muttered. "What are you, a kid with popsicle sticks? If your success threatens them, that says more about them than you." I let the words echo. Then, slowly, I opened my laptop and pulled up my business dashboard. Ivy leaned in as numbers flashed across the screen. Order counts, quarterly revenue, collaborations pending approval. "Wait," she said, her voice softening. "You made this last month?" I nodded. "And the one before that, and the one before that." Then I showed her the email I hadn't told anyone about. An exclusive collaboration offer from one of the top luxury eco-retailers in the country. Front window placement, national rollout, my name on every piece. Ivy looked at me like I had just confessed to hiding a second identity. "You've been sitting on this?" I shrugged. It didn't feel real yet. "It's more than real. It's revolutionary. So, when do you stop hiding?" I looked at the sculpture in front of me. Still unfinished, still fragile, but holding shape. Soon, I said quietly, but not until I make it undeniable. Her grin spread. Let me guess. You have a plan. I always did. They just never saw it. I leaned over the steel and began welding the base. Sparks flew gently, reflecting in Ivy's eyes as she watched me reclaim not just metal, but meaning. Because success wasn't just a job. It was the quiet revenge they never saw coming. After Ivy left, I cleaned up the studio and let the silence settle back in. The world outside had gone to sleep, but my mind was wide awake, pulsing with something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time: clarity. They laughed at the plan once, but what if that was the first step toward taking it seriously? I opened my laptop and clicked into an old archive drive, one I hadn't touched in years. The screen flickered, revealing folders buried deep in digital dust. Among them, a file labeled EV Transition Proposal, Rowenna B. I clicked it open, and just like that, I was transported back 5 years. The memory was vivid. I'd spent 6 months researching how Bundy Motors, our family's pride and archaic dealership, could pivot into the future. Electric vehicles, solar integration, community incentives. It was a blueprint to not just survive, but lead. I remembered printing copies, binding them with care, and walking into that boardroom with nothing but hope in my chest. I pitched it to Celeste, Gerald, even Dahlia. My mother sat in silence, dabbing her coffee with cream like she wasn't watching her daughter offer them gold. Celeste had burst out laughing midway through my presentation. "Rowenna," she scoffed, "we sell horsepower, not fairy tales." Gerald didn't laugh. He leaned back, steepled his fingers and said, "This isn't some activist blog. This is legacy. You don't rewrite legacy. You preserve it." Then Dahlia offered that fake sympathetic smile she wore like perfume, the kind that made you feel worse just being near it. No one even touched the binder I handed them. They left it on the table when they walked out. Back in the present, I stared at that same proposal. Outdated now, but the bones were good. Really good. I got up, brewed a pot of strong coffee, and began updating it. Market projections, government EV incentives, local outreach initiatives, all refreshed. I added a new brand concept, Bundy Recharged, and mocked up digital mock-ups of storefronts that merged innovation with heritage. This time, I wasn't doing it for approval. I was doing it because I could. My phone buzzed just after midnight. Travis, of all people. I hesitated, then picked up. "Ro?" His voice was cautious. "Hey, what is it?" I didn't have patience for niceties tonight. He cleared his throat. They might need help soon. I think you should talk to Celeste." I exhaled through my nose, slow and deliberate. "She had her chance to listen," I said. He paused, then mumbled, "Dad's not doing so great. The dealership's down 30%. It's not good." "And now I'm supposed to what? Ride in like a rescue dog?" I asked. "They locked the gate, burned the bridge, then salted the ground." "I'm just saying," he trailed off. "You've always been the one who knew how to fix things." The silence between us was heavier than the conversation itself. "I'm not fixing anything," I finally said, "but I am offering something." Before he could respond, I hung up. Back on my laptop, I finalized the document, proofread it twice, converted it into a sleek PDF file. Then I drafted an email to Bundy Motors' corporate inbox. No pleasantries, no introductions. Just a subject line that said, "Blueprints you burned, resurrected." I hit send, no second thoughts. Because this wasn't about revenge, it was about reminding them who I was before they tried to erase me. By the time Travis hung up, I already knew what I needed to do. There was no thrill, no smug satisfaction, just precision. That night, I didn't go to sleep. I opened my laptop, launched the encrypted folder I'd saved for years, and pulled up the documents for a dormant LLC I'd registered back when I still believed one day I might need to protect myself. From them. The name on the LLC? RWB Holdings, short for Rowenna Willow Bundy. No one would ever connect it back unless I wanted them to. The next morning I was stirring a second cup of coffee when Naomi called. "Hey," she said, her voice low, urgent. "It's happening." I didn't need her to explain. "The house?" I asked. "Private sale, insider list only. You have 2 days. They're trying to move it quiet." Of course they were. "Make the offer," I said. "Full price, no negotiation. And Naomi, don't use my name." There was a pause on the line. You sure? I've never been more. That evening, I signed the final e-docs with the kind of ease that only comes from prepared anger. I watched as the screen flashed transaction completed and the words title transferred to RWB Holdings, LLC appeared. Just like that, the house where I was disowned became mine. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I popped a bottle of champagne and poured a single glass. No toast, no audience, just the soft clink of crystal against granite and the rush of carbonation rising like breath from a buried truth. The next day, across town, Celeste's phone buzzed. She was halfway through her morning smoothie when the notification popped up. Property update, Bundy home. Status, sold. I wasn't there, but I could imagine her expression. What the hell? She probably snapped. Dahlia's gasp echoed off kitchen tile. Sold to who? Travis must have gone quiet. Maybe he'd begun to piece it together. Maybe not. But that didn't matter. Because later that week, I parked 3 blocks away and walked the last few hundred feet alone. My steps slowed as I approached the house, now mine, sitting quiet under a gray Colorado sky. I unlocked the door with a new code. The beeping keypad chirped once, then opened like it had never locked me out. Inside, it was sterile. Empty. No furniture, no family photos, just faint outlines where memories used to hang. I walked into the kitchen, past the island where Lenora used to keep her lemon bars, past the oven where Gerald used to watch football while waiting on dinner. I reached the corner, knelt down, and gently pulled back the lower cabinet trim. The wood panel gave slightly, just enough. There they were, my initials, RWB 17 years old, a box cutter and a burst of defiance. Still there, still mine. I pressed my palm against them, not in mourning, no, in recognition. Then I stepped back, took a deep breath, and called Ivy. She picked up on the first ring. I'm inside, I said. There was a pause. The house? The house. She exhaled sharply. You okay? I'm not here to cry, I said. I'm here to build. I walked into the living room and looked around the barren walls. I want to turn it into a gallery, I said. No signs, no name, just art made from things people throw away. Ivy was quiet for a long second. That's poetic as hell, she finally said. I allowed myself a smile. Fitting, right? Then we hung up, and I stood there in silence, listening to the house breathe again. The floor creaked in familiar patterns. Light poured through the same stained glass window by the stairwell. But now, none of it belonged to them. It was mine. And what they threw away had just become the beginning of my next masterpiece. I didn't announce it. I didn't post selfies or ribbon-cutting ceremonies. I let the house speak for itself. The windows now framed local art. The hallway walls held pieces sculpted from discarded electronics and stained glass shards. Each room carried its own name, each theme rooted in reclamation. But silence apparently made them nervous. It started subtle. A Yelp review showed up. 1 star. I worked here. Never got paid. They lie about sustainability. Avoid. I blinked, reread, and knew immediately I'd never hired that name. I'd never met that person. By lunchtime, there were 5 more. By evening, Ivy walked into the studio holding her tablet like a detonator. Ro, she said, her voice tight. Someone's launching a smear campaign. Glassdoor, LinkedIn, even local Facebook mom groups. Comments claiming I stole concepts, that I was a fraud, a trust fund brat with no real talent. Ivy's face hardened. Want me to dig? I nodded once. Make it clean. She vanished into the office, while I sat under the piece we titled The Unspoken. It was a wall-hung silhouette made from torn love letters and fractured mirrors. It suddenly felt too close to real. An hour later, Ivy came back, eyes narrowed like she'd just come from a war room. Guess whose Wi-Fi that first review came from, she said. Lenora Bundy's home network. I stared at her, wordless. And 2 of the LinkedIn messages? She continued. Same IP as Gerald's company desktop. The breath that left my chest wasn't surprise. It was confirmation. They weren't just erasing me. They were trying to bury the thing I built from the ashes they left me in. My phone buzzed. Dahlia. I stared at the screen, then opened her message. Please don't go public with this. Celeste can't know I'm texting you. I didn't hesitate. I typed back 1 sentence. You stayed silent when they erased me. Now silence won't protect you. Her typing bubbles appeared, then disappeared. I locked my phone and turned it face down. That evening, Julian, my longtime mentor and media advisor, called. "Rowenna," he said, "there's a journalist poking around. Wants to do a feature. Notice the attack pattern." "Ivy wants to sue," I said. "And you?" "I want to win." He was quiet for a beat. "Then don't strike yet. Let the gallery speak first." The next day, I posted one image to every platform I had. No text, just a single photo. The house, painted, repurposed, radiant. And in the middle of the frame, on the inner door, a handwritten quote framed in glass. "This was the place they erased me. Now it's where I exist completely." No tags, no hashtags, no call to action. By nightfall, it had been shared 4,000 times. 2 days later, a student from the local university tagged me in a video. She stood crying in the entry hall, filming the exhibit made of medical bills and broken mirrors. The caption read, "I brought my mom. We haven't spoken in 3 years. She held my hand the whole time." The following morning, I woke to a fresh onslaught of fake reviews and an email from a journalist named Michaela Foster. Subject line, "Would you like to share your side?" I stared at it for a long time. Because this wasn't just about my story anymore. They still thought silence meant defeat. They still hadn't realized I didn't come back to ask for a seat at their table. I came back to build my own, and the table was already full. Ivy stood behind the curtain, earpiece in, her eyes flicking between the stage timer and the main entryway. "Doors in 30, she mouthed. I nodded and stepped back, taking one last look around the space that used to be a home, and now bore not a single trace of domesticity. My childhood bedroom had become a chamber of projected grief, cycling images of forgotten daughters, twisted heirlooms, and scorched paper sculptures beneath flickering lights. Everything they thought they discarded, I'd turned into legacy. Outside, people lined the walkway. Critics, press, art lovers, neighbors. Some came out of curiosity. Others came because the hashtags had reached them. #the forgotten daughter, #trash-toe-truth. A few brought their own family estrangements, like luggage they were finally ready to unpack. The doors opened. Within minutes, murmurs swept through the house-turned gallery. Eyes moved from piece to piece, a chandelier of rusted keys labeled "Access Revoked," a sculpture of melted silverware titled "Fed Until Silent." And at the center, the installation I'd worked on for months, sat the disownment papers, scorched, curled legal documents suspended in molten glass, encased in steel. People cried, some whispered, others clutched each other's arms. Cameras rolled. Journalists jotted notes. Someone gasped when they saw the family name embossed on the base. Bundy. And then I heard the heels. Click, click, click. I didn't need to turn around. I knew those footsteps. I'd heard them in kitchens and courtrooms, at weddings I wasn't invited to. Lenora, Gerald, Celeste, Travis. They walked in like they still owned the air, their gazes scanning the walls as if the paintings would crumble under their stare. They didn't. Celeste spotted me and beelined toward the central piece. I caught her reflection in the glass before she even opened her mouth. "We need to talk," she hissed. "We're already talking," I replied, keeping my voice even. "And we're in public, just how you like it." Her jaw tightened. "You think this exhibit is justice?" "No," I said, looking around, "but it's memory, and memory doesn't ask permission." Lenora tugged on Gerald's sleeve. "This is humiliating." "I didn't invite you," I said, "but you were always good at showing up when something wasn't about you." Celeste's eyes blazed. "You were always a burden, Rowenna." Gasps. Cameras flashed. Silence followed like a curtain drop. Behind me, Ivy stepped forward, her hand gently finding my back. I didn't need her words to stay grounded. I turned away, motioning to the final projection, my name, slowly burning across the upper gallery wall above the sculpture. What you tried to forget, I became. The Bundys stood frozen for a beat longer before turning and walking out, their departure quieter than their arrival. The door clicked behind them, but the room didn't quiet down. Applause began. Not thunderous, not dramatic, just honest, moved. Later that night, I sat alone in the far corner room. Once the family den, now the archive of absences. Photos of family holidays from which I'd been cropped. School awards never displayed. A chair left intentionally empty. I watched an older woman gently press her hand against the glass between herself and one piece titled "Mother," unavailable. Her eyes were full, Her mouth trembled. Beside her, a younger woman, her daughter maybe, reached for her hand. "This," the woman whispered. "This feels like it was made for me." I smiled quietly as the gallery lights dimmed for closing. The Bundys left in silence, but the world had already heard everything. Weeks passed like soft waves, restless but rhythmic. The media buzz had died down, but the story never left. People still came to the gallery, lingered by the sculpture of burned disownment papers, and whispered as if they were entering a church made of memory. Phoenix Motors launched quietly, not with fireworks or champagne, but with solar panels and a silent opening ceremony beneath morning sunlight. The sign out front wasn't flashy. It simply read, Phoenix. Beneath it, smaller letters spelled out, mobility, memory, meaning. I stood near the entrance that morning, watching a line of teenagers file in. Local interns, part of our youth training program. Travis waved as he explained the new electric models to them. He had changed. Or maybe, like me, he had simply dropped the version of himself that had played defense for too long. Inside, Dahlia was helping set up the community arts center housed in the old conference room. She caught my glance and gave me a quiet nod. We didn't speak much these days, but there was something healing in our silence. It wasn't the absence of words, but the absence of lies. Celeste was not there. I didn't ask. 2 days before the launch, a letter had arrived, handwritten, neat block letters I hadn't seen in years. Rowenna, I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know, I saw what I failed to protect. I'm sorry I wasn't stronger. Dad? I read it once, then tucked it inside a notebook. I didn't know if it was closure, but it was acknowledgement. And sometimes that's the most you can hope for from men like Gerald. The day after launch, I got the call. Lenora was in the hospital. Exhaustion, heart palpitations. Ivy was the one who picked up the phone and relayed the message to me. I think you should go, she said softly. I did. The hospital room was cold. She looked smaller than I remembered. We exchanged barely a few words. She opened her mouth once, maybe to say, I'm sorry. But I didn't wait for it to come out. I placed a single white carnation on the side table and whispered, This isn't a reconciliation. It's a goodbye that I control. Then I left. Days later, during the Phoenix board launch upstairs in the gallery space, we held a private moment. The core team gathered around the sculpture that had once been the disownment papers, molten glass now, shaped like a rising phoenix with wings stretched wide. I walked up to the glass furnace, opened the steel hatch, and slid in a final folded replica of the original paper. The flames caught, crackled, and swallowed it. I watched it melt, quietly, steadily, until the document that once stripped me of family became part of something greater. A new crest rose in its place, engraved beneath it, from what was meant to break me. Later that night, I stood alone in my studio, not working, not planning, just breathing. I walked through the gallery as the staff prepared to close. The lights dimmed one by one, leaving only the glow of the central sculpture. My fingers brushed the wall, now painted in rich, calm tones, nothing like the walls I grew up with. They erased me from their home, I whispered aloud. So I built one where I never had to ask to belong. Ivy joined me near the front door, her coat already on. Will you ever let them back in? She asked. I turned toward her, thought for a long beat. Some doors, once closed, don't need to be reopened, I said. They can become walls that hold the roof up instead. We smiled, not in triumph, but in peace. As the last light turned off behind us, I looked back one final time. I didn't get my family back. I got something better, myself, whole and unashamed. Sometimes the family we're born into refuses to see us for who we truly are, so we build something they can't ignore. This story wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming identity, dignity, and peace on your own terms. Have you ever had to walk away from people who were supposed to love you? What did you rebuild from that silence? If stories like this resonate with you, about resilience, truth, and family drama, make sure to subscribe for more. There's always more beneath the surface.